Firstly, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organisers of today's rally for the invite and, importantly, the opportunity to address you all. It is indeed a great privilege and an honour to stand here with you in solidarity. I want to commend you all for what is truly a wonderful turnout, a turnout that speaks volumes. It is an inspiration that you should take heart from and from which to rally your cause, your unfinished business of truth, justice and freedom. Today, by your presence here, you have spoken in thousands. Yours is a collective voice that cannot be silenced, and whilst you gather here and elsewhere, the memory of those you commemorate, their cause and their sacrifice, and ultimate sacrifice, cannot be extinguished. My name is Mark Thompson, Marcus McThomas in my native Irish tongue. I represent an organisation in Ireland called Relatives for Justice, a grassroots human rights NGO representing hundreds of families of those killed in Ireland during the recent decades of conflict and struggle. We have many similarities and parallels. We are two nations that historically share strikingly similar parallels. We are two peoples with a sophisticated and rich tapestry of culture, language, customs, ways, religions and traditions, advanced and civilized long before imperialist invaders. We are two very distinct peoples on two very different parts of the globe, yet both living with the horrendous effects and legacy of colonial imperialism and all of the awful impacts that flow from such unwarranted, unjust and violent interference in our homelands. We are two nations engaged in struggles for social, civil and human rights, struggling for national self-determination, struggling to be free from oppression and occupation and the legacy of the past that still today requires to be addressed. In many respects, our histories are interwoven in the policies, practices and patterns that originated and were crafted in this imperial city we stand in today. The decisions made here generations ago, the policies and practices of its armed forces, its politicians, historically and even in most recent times, still resonate and have impact for us. They require focus, acknowledgement, recognition and accounted for. We require change. That change must be underpinned by justice. We have much in common, and as a representative of Relatives for Justice here today, I stand in international solidarity with you and your people. Our collective historical experience in both our lands are one of occupation held by military force, repression, corruption of the rule of law and the courts, the legal banning of our culture, rights and religion. And we too have witnessed the law used as a tool for oppression, discrimination and inequality, violence, brutality, torture and murder, all sanctioned and carried out with impunity. We have both witnessed the use of misinformation and censorship, state-controlled death squads, the use of pseudo-gangs to terrorise, and the partition of our land with an inbuilt majority that had nothing but misrule and injustice. We have witnessed the division of people, the creation of sectarianism deliberately created for the purposes of maintaining control and for distracting from the core causes of occupation, injustice and its flowing legacy. We have witnessed the taking of food from our people on an industrial scale to feed England and its armies, forcing an imposed famine. In our language, we call it Angorta Mór, the Great Hunger. This in turn saw millions leave through forced emigration with no option, forced from their homeland, which is why today Irish people populate all corners of the globe. So we stand here today, folks, and we remember historically the millions of lives lost through imperial colonialism across the globe. And we also take hope from people in other countries that face similar legacies. The Kenyan and Malayan peoples who in this very same city recently and successfully brought their cases for justice to the Supreme Court seeking remedy and reparations. And most importantly, for the truth about those awful events: beheadings, mutilations, torture and murder, not from terrorists, but from a terrorist nation. We take hope from their struggle that there is light at the end of the tunnel that can sometimes appear to have an endless darkness. We especially remember and celebrate the tens of thousands affected in our own homelands. We especially remember thousands killed in more recent times, the horrendous murders at the Golden Temple, and consequently elsewhere throughout 1984 of your people, and since then in your struggle, the struggle for truth, justice and freedom. Today, as we gather, we bear witness to that struggle and suffering that screams out to the world justice and freedom. We say in the words of Martin Luther King, "Let freedom ring, let justice ring, let the truth be told." Let accountability and justice be laid directly at the doorsteps of those ultimately responsible for the most egregious human rights violations you as a people have experienced. Let both our peoples take hope from one another, that whilst we struggle in our homelands and through our diaspora throughout the world, that our solidarity with one another renews our strength, our courage, our conviction, and our resolve to continue our respective struggles for truth, justice, and freedom. This year, 2016, is the centenary of the Easter Rising, when Irish men and Irish women throughout Ireland struck a blow for independence, liberty, fraternity, and equality for all. That liberty saw Britain's occupation leave part of our country, but also left part of it partitioned. We too have unfinished business and unification. The struggle in Ireland in more recent times has moved from one of war, with no winners or losers, to one where negotiations were brought about and where a power-sharing executive in a devolved government is now in place, where former Republican leaders hold power with their British Unionist counterparts. However, during the intensive period of negotiations for over a decade, there was a consistent theme of opponents to Irish unification, justice and equality and truth, to divide us as a people. This tactic is not unique. In the struggle in South Africa, more people died during negotiations than in any other period. Our leaders worked closely with Mandela, or as we more affectionately termed them, Madiba, and we learned much from their struggle, and they too from ours. That is the type of international solidarity I speak of. Today, we struggle for justice for past violations, and to end revisionism, for the recovery of historical memory and historical clarification. In many respects, our justice is our freedom. And so in the context, I want to appeal to you to keep faith of the quest for all of that is legitimate and right. I want to appeal to you to stand united. Unity is strength. There is hope. Truth and justice and freedom can and will be delivered. And I want to appeal to you to stay focused. Don't be divided. Don't be fractured by false and empty promises. Keep focused and true to the principled convictions of those we remember, celebrate and commemorate here today, your people. I want to conclude my remarks here today by telling you that we too experienced hunger strikes, deaths in the prisons, deaths of those from our community who were incarcerated. They too made ultimate sacrifices for a greater cause. I come from a part of Belfast called Twinbrook. It is where IRA volunteer Bobby Sands, who led the 1981 hunger strike that saw 10 courageous men die, came from too. Bobby Sands was an IRA leader in the H-Box jails, where several hundred Irish prisoners of war were brutalised in a process designed to break them and consequently break the Irish struggle for justice, equality and freedom. From his prison cell and during his hunger strike, Bobby Sands was elected an MP to the British Parliament, contrary to Margaret Thatcher's claim that he had no support. Bobby Sands was not just an IRA volunteer and a revolutionary. His life was multidimensional. He was a community leader, an activist, a singer, a songwriter, a poet, as well as a son, husband, father, brother, and a comrade to many. While in prison, Bobby Sands wrote prolifically, and he wrote a famous poem called The Rhythm of Time, from which I will read an appropriate extract, from which I hope you may take some hope. And it goes, "It is found in every light of hope, it knows no bounds nor space. It had risen in red and black and white, it is there in every race. It lies in the hearts of heroes dead, it screams in tyrants' eyes. It has reached the peaks of mountains high, it comes searing across the skies. It lights the dark of this prison cell, it thunders forth its might. It is the undauntable thought, my friend, that thought that says, I'm right. You're right, and your struggle is right, and thank you in solidarity."